Welcome to NeoNexus. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating transformations happening on the world stage. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more insights. For decades, the United States has been the anchor of security and economic stability in the Middle East, especially in the oil-rich Gulf region. American influence shaped policies, economies, and even the security architecture of the area. But now, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are charting a new course, looking eastward for alliances and opportunities that go beyond traditional Western partnerships. This isn't a sudden move. It's the result of years of careful re-evaluation as the U.S. gradually shifts its focus away from the region, prioritizing other global interests. Gulf leaders are now openly questioning whether it's wise, or even sustainable, to rely solely on America in a world that's becoming increasingly multipolar, with new centers of power emerging. Their answer? A clear no. That's why they're actively seeking membership in BRICS, a group that's gaining momentum as a counterweight to Western dominance. BRICS offers an alternative to the Western-led order, and joining is a bold political statement. It signals a desire for greater autonomy and a seat at the table where global decisions are made. Saudi Arabia and Qatar want to be key players in a more balanced world, not just junior partners to the U.S. They're forging new economic and diplomatic ties, especially with Asian giants like China and India. This pivot is one of the most significant geopolitical shifts of the century, challenging American influence in a region that remains vital for global energy and trade. The implications are far-reaching, touching everything from oil prices and energy security to the status of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Old alliances are being questioned, and new ones are forming in real time. The diplomatic chessboard is being reset. The Gulf is now at the center of a changing world order, and its choices will shape the future of global power for years to come. Stay tuned as we continue to track these historic changes. To grasp the Gulf's pivot, let's break down BRICS. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, major emerging economies. It's evolved from a concept into a formal bloc with summits, policy coordination, and its own development bank. BRICS challenges Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank, offering developing nations new options. The bloc isn't a military alliance. It's about economic and political cooperation. Members want a multipolar world where the global South has a real voice. By joining forces, they boost their bargaining power and push for global reforms. The inclusion of energy giants like Saudi Arabia and Qatar gives BRICS new economic and strategic weight. This expansion transforms BRICS from a symbol of shifting power into a real agent of change. The vision of a multipolar world is becoming more credible and more powerful. Why are Saudi Arabia and Qatar eager to join BRICS? It's about economic ambition and strategic recalculation. Both nations want to diversify beyond oil and gas, opening up new markets and investment opportunities. The U.S. is seen as less reliable, with its focus shifting elsewhere and disagreements over key issues. China, a BRICS leader, offers partnership without political strings, becoming the Gulf's top trading partner. Russia, too, brings pragmatic cooperation, especially in oil production. Joining BRICS is about strategic autonomy, working with all major powers, not just the West. Saudi Arabia and Qatar want flexibility to choose partners based on their own interests. By joining BRICS, they're signaling independence and a determination to shape their own destiny. One major consequence of this global economic shift is the accelerating move toward de-dollarization, a trend that's gaining momentum across many regions. For decades, oil and other key commodities have been traded almost exclusively in US dollars, granting America immense financial power and influence over the world economy. Now, countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar are seriously considering accepting alternative currencies, such as the Chinese yuan or even the euro, for their oil and gas exports, signaling a major change in global trade practices. This isn't a simple or overnight switch, but the process has already begun, with some oil sales now taking place in non-dollar currencies, challenging the dollar's long-standing dominance. The motivation behind this shift is clear. By moving away from the dollar, these nations hope to shield themselves from the impact of U.S. sanctions and reduce their vulnerability to sudden changes in American policy. Diversifying currency reserves is becoming a form of economic self-defense, allowing countries to better protect their economies in an increasingly competitive and unpredictable world. As economic giants like China and India continue to grow, it's only natural for their currencies to play a much bigger role in international trade and finance. Trading in local or regional currencies can be more efficient, help reduce transaction costs, and even foster stronger economic ties between trading partners. Organizations like BRICS are actively building the financial infrastructure needed to support this transition, making it easier for countries to trade without relying on the dollar. The era of the dollar's absolute dominance may be coming to an end, as more nations seek alternatives and new financial alliances emerge. The global financial system is evolving rapidly, with new players and technologies reshaping the landscape at an unprecedented pace. The Gulf region is at the forefront of this transformation, helping to lead the way toward a more multipolar and resilient global economy. The Gulf's pivot to BRICS and away from the dollar sends shockwaves through the U.S. economy and global standing. This shift is more than just a financial maneuver. It signals a fundamental change in the balance of global power, with consequences that reach far beyond the trading floor. If oil producers begin accepting other currencies for their exports, the global demand for the U.S. dollar could shrink dramatically. This would risk devaluation of the dollar, making imports more expensive and potentially driving up inflation at home. Everyday Americans could feel the impact through higher prices at the pump and in stores. America's geopolitical leverage, built on the Petrodollar system, would erode, weakening its ability to shape international events and influence global markets. The U.S. would lose a key tool that has underpinned its dominance for decades. U.S. sanctions, once a powerful tool of foreign policy, would lose much of their bite if countries can freely trade outside the dollar system. This would make it harder for Washington to pressure rivals or enforce international norms. Washington's influence in the Middle East would diminish, forcing a major rethink of its foreign policy strategies. The U.S. would need to find new ways to engage with partners who now have more choices than ever before. The U.S. must now compete for influence in a region where it once set the rules. This competition will require fresh diplomatic efforts, economic incentives, and a willingness to adapt to new realities. Years of perceived disengagement and unilateralism have eroded trust with Gulf allies. Many now question whether the U.S. can still be counted on as a steadfast partner. Rebuilding that trust won't be easy. It will require consistent engagement, mutual respect, and a clear demonstration of commitment to shared interests. The U.S. must prove it can still be a reliable partner in a world of new options where alliances are no longer guaranteed and every relationship must be earned. The era of automatic allegiance is over. Countries are weighing their options and the U.S. must work harder to maintain its influence. America faces a new, more competitive reality, one where adaptability, innovation, and renewed diplomacy will determine its place in the world. Decisions in Riyadh and Doha are redrawing the global map of energy and trade. If Saudi Arabia sells oil in yuan, other producers may follow, creating a multi-currency oil market. This shift gives more power to energy consumers like China and India, bypassing the dollar. BRICS nations are increasing trade among themselves in local currencies, building a parallel trading ecosystem. For the Gulf, joining BRICS means easier access to these markets and less exposure to U.S. sanctions. Trade flows are shifting from the west to the east and south. China is brokering deals and signing long-term energy agreements with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. New economic centers and supply chains are emerging, driven by BRICS integration. The old trade routes are fading as new arteries of commerce connect the global south. The world's economic map is being redrawn before our eyes. These shifts have real consequences for ordinary people in the U.S. and the Gulf. For Americans, a weaker dollar means higher prices for imports and gasoline, reducing purchasing power. Jobs tied to the dollar's global role could be at risk, and government borrowing may become more expensive. The economic privileges Americans have long enjoyed are no longer guaranteed. In Qatar and Saudi Arabia, economic diversification could bring new jobs and national pride. Massive investments promise prosperity, but the transition carries risks. Moving away from the U.S. security umbrella could create new vulnerabilities. It's unclear if China or Russia can offer the same military protection as the U.S. Regional instability could impact safety and security. Closer ties with non-democratic powers may reinforce authoritarianism and limit political freedoms. The benefits and risks of this new era will be felt by millions. The Gulf's realignment signals a new global order. The era of American unipolarity is over. We're in a multipolar world with competing centers of power. BRICS, now with major energy producers, is the most organized challenge to the Western-led system. The future could see fragmented blocs, or a more balanced, cooperative multipolar system. The US may remain a key player, but as a first among equals, relying more on diplomacy. The Gulf's pivot to BRICS and away from the dollar is a turning point. This shift is about economic diversification and strategic autonomy. The effects will be profound for the US, global markets, and ordinary people. One thing is clear. The era of a single dominant superpower is behind us.